What's up, guys? Kevin Allen here, aka the Geek from DFS Army. And NFL Week 10 was epic here at DFS Army, including for myself. I took down second place, almost first, in the NFL Rush on FanDuel, and there was a lot of other big wins as well. But the purpose of this video is I want to kind of show you guys, one of the differences between DFS Army and other sites is we're all about teaching, we're all about learning, and we're all about making players better. So I wanted to make a video here to show you exactly the settings I used on the DFS Army Domination Station Optimizer that took down this contest. So, more proof of concept. There we go. Dom Station, absolute domination for NFL Week 10. I'm going to actually show you a couple other big wins from this weekend as well, and I think they're relevant here. Just all across FanDuel and DraftKings. And Week 10 was crazy. This one's really impressive by Gemini here. This is a $25 to enter contest. So this is the quarter game, and amazingly, it looks like you only put in 100 lineups in there, which is wild. So first place takedown for Gemini. I'm going to show you some more of that here. Audi also. I mean, this domination in the juke. I don't know how much the price of the juke is to enter, but you don't normally see somebody take first, second, third, fourth. Different people. These are all different DFS Army subscribers. Mantis taking down a big tournament on DraftKings as well, all using the Dom Station. Check out this, though. This was the one that I was really impressed by. Not because, it's a nickel game. Who cares, right? It's just a nickel. What's the big deal? Well, I'll tell you what the big deal is. The Domination Station produced 1, 2, 3, 4 different people, different DFS Army subscribers, all in that top 10. This might as well have been a Millie Maker. It's the size of a Millie Maker, and it takes as much of a score. As a matter of fact, the 170 here would have taken first place in the rush that I was in. So a really good week overall for DFS Army and the Domination Station and the projection models and all of that good stuff. With that being said, I wanted to show how I did it because I can't show how anybody else did it. So I'm going to pull up the DFS Army Domination Station, and I'm going to literally show you the settings and options so you understand, hey, this is a lot of stuff that we talk about. We talked about it all throughout the offseason. If you were with me for the back testing that we did for the optimizer and for these various big tournaments on NFL, we've back tested everything. We do live streams where we back test. We learn how to use these tools and best utilize them. So I wanted to sort of show a little bit of what, I guess you'd say, put your money where your mouth is, that exactly the settings that I am talking about are what I am doing on screen. And you'll see it in real time. So let's get into it. This is the DFS Army Domination Station. And actually, after this, I could even go to backtest mode and see if we could replicate that winning lineup. But you'll see why it won't always replicate in a second as I explain how we did this. So I started out by simply making the baseline rule that I make for every DFS tournament, which is stack QB with no less than one wide receiver, tight end from the same team, as you can see here. That is under legacy stacking. So we use our legacy stacks and we make a basic rule. Now, I added a second rule here, as you can see, and it was specific to Joe Flacco, that I wanted to have him with no less than 2 wide receiver tight ends from the same team. And the reason I did that was because Joe Flacco is so kind of statuesque in what he does. Plus, they don't really throw to the running back, to where I was worried about running back vulturing Joe Flacco in that game. So I just made that one too. But I've also found that on FanDuel especially, QB plus 2 stacks are almost a little bit too restrictive more often than not. So this season, that's not really been an approach I've been using. But I do like double stacks. So how do you reconcile that? Well, that brings us to the next stack rule that we use, or that I used for this contest, and that I always recommend using for every DFS contest if you're using the Domination Station. And this is the Sim Boost rule. Now, at DFS Army, we've built our version of contest simulations a little bit different. Everybody's got their own approach to this. We're doing the simulation we do is not a contest sim. It's more simulating in-game action. And the way we do it is by making these rules that simulate correlative in-game action. Now, here's the rule for that I used on this one. So if QB is in lineup, so whatever the quarterback is that's heading up that lineup, we increase the projection for wide receiver, tight end, same team, by 17%. And I increased the projection for running back, wide receiver, tight end, opposing team by 6%. Now, occasionally, I will also add a decrease in running back, same team for the quarterback by 5 to 7%, depending on who the running back is. So if it was a team like, for example, the Ravens, I might create a negative correlation between the quarterback and the running back, because that truly is what happens during these games. Every time the running back is running for a touchdown, if he runs for one, so if he's a running back, the quarterback is not throwing for that touchdown. So we don't want to target quarterbacks from teams where the running back runs for 3 touchdowns. Usually the quarterback doesn't do that much. Now, it's not always, and there are exceptions to every rule, but that's sort of the thought process there. But I didn't do that here because a lot of the quarterbacks in my mix were the kind of quarterbacks that could throw a touchdown to the running back. Like, for example, Christian McCaffrey. He's catching passes. He's catching touchdowns just as much as he might be rushing for them, or at a reasonable enough level that I wouldn't want to negate that from happening. Those are the basic rules. Now, some additional rules I put into place here, 3 uniques, and I added max 1 player versus defense. Now, what does that do? That allows 1 player against the defense that's in that lineup. And the reason I do it is because we found in back testing that effectively defense performance is not directly inversely related. There's no negative correlation really between or let's put it this way. The negative correlation between a defense and opposing offensive players is really, really minimal. And it's not really worth making a hard, fast rule that you can never have players versus defense, because it's just not that predictive. And they're not actually that negatively correlated. So I allowed 1 player versus defense. And here's a couple of big things that I did here. This is FanDuel. So one of the things I always talk about on FanDuel is I want running backs in my flex. And now this was an interesting week because it was also a week where I kind of like double tight end at times. So in a rare change for me, I actually allowed 10% tight end in the flex, 10% wide receiver, 100% running back in the flex. And here's the big one. Here's a big one. I pushed up randomization all the way to 50%. So max randomization. Now, another thing I adjusted personally, and this random, I adjust projections quite aggressively. But what I did this time was I shifted to I looked at the props that we have on the research station. So on the DFS Army research station, and soon on the optimizer as well, we not only have standard projections, but we also have prop-based projections, meaning we just have a projection based on what the props are for that player and just that. So I actually adjusted the Domination Station and typed in the prop-based projections for a lot of these players. You can see the reds are all those, and then the greens are where I then adjusted certain projections higher. So you can see here, like with the prop-based projections, I was getting almost no McCaffrey or Barkley, so I had to adjust them higher a little bit. There were some interesting notes, though, in the props that I took note of. In particular, James Conner, Kamara, of course, but James Conner and Austin Eckler were 2 names that were kind of weirdly popping a lot more in those projection models than I thought they should. So I actually adjusted them even down a little bit, but that didn't really matter, as I think that Conner was one of the players in this winning lineup. So let's get into what was going on here. In addition to the settings you saw, the stack settings that I set up, I did control some for the quarterback position. Not a ton, but some. So let me kind of show what I did here at quarterback. A lot of it was with each run and how much exposure I was getting. I'm going to do a run in a second, but I did set some max caps. For example, Brock Purdy was showing up a ton. I capped him at 15%. Unfortunately, could have used more of that. Right? Sam Darnold, some of the other names that I want. I was actually pushing for quite a bit of CJ Stroud. Didn't work, but they won the game, or they played well, but it didn't work. But I thought it was a good play at 3% ownership, so I pushed some ownership to him. I had some Caleb exposure. I was actually reducing. I think I unchecked. Yeah, a good move late. Unchecked Aaron Rodgers. He was showing up too much. I unchecked some of these names that actually Derek Carr did okay, but I unchecked him too because for the brand, right? For the brand. So here we go. The basic settings. Stack QB plus 1. The sim boost rule. If QB... Wait, where are we? Sim boost. Yeah. Sim boost rule, which was QB. If QB is in the lineup, increase projection for wide receiver, tight end, same team, 17%. Increase projection, wide receiver, running back, tight end, opposing team. Here, that'll show there by 6%. So create some game stacks on occasion. Now, there's reason behind that. The reason I'm not doing a heftier boost on the opposing team is I don't really want too many game stacks. You don't want everything game stacked, and I don't want it to force it. What I want it to do is allow the game stacks to happen or have them more likely to happen when the projections call for it. So it's very much projection based rather than just driven by the rule. I think that gives us the better lineups. So with that being said, we just let it rip. And we're on the back. Oh, that's what happened. I jumped over to back test. I was like, what is going on? Some stuff changed on screen. Yeah, so we let it rip from there. Optimal mode, 3 uniques. Now, you might ask, why did I use optimal and not tournament mode? And that's primarily because note that I did not set any exposure maxes on the normal players. And this is a big departure from how I was normally setting up the Domination Station, especially during the back test. So this for me is a bit of a departure. And the reason I'm able to do that departure, or the reason I was able to, was because when you jack up randomization this high, it just naturally spreads out your exposures. All right, here's the actual run. So you can see the actual percentages and all of that stuff. And really, a lot of these quarterbacks failed, but it didn't matter. All that mattered was one that made it, right? So when you look across the exposures, I had plenty of Kamara, Hall, Swift, Jones, but I would get a little Eckler above how much I wanted. And I was artificially reducing my James Conner exposure. Obviously, regrets in the end, should have listened to the projection more, but even just the 7% was enough to get him in that winning lineup. You can see here, actually, this will be a good way to show it. In stack combinations, we're going to find that I'm confident that we will find, let's see, where is Brock Purdy? There we go. Brock Purdy, and here's where I got cited. So my Brock Purdy lineups, which were the only ones that mattered, note that 5 of them were just Purdy to Pearsall. Now, there were some double stacks here, some Jawan, some Purdy to Debo, some just solo to Kittle, and then some of these combinations. But 5 lineups of Brock Purdy were Purdy to Pearsall. And again, that's what it took. Pearsall actually has shown up in my tournament winners. I've had 2 effectively kind of takedowns this season that were like that, and Pearsall has been in both of them. So I got much love for Ricky Pearsall. Let's see what we did with Pearsall. I recall raising his projection up a bit to make sure I got some of him. He was somebody I discussed. Yeah, I raised him up a little bit just to make sure I was getting a little bit of exposure to him at 5,700 because we knew that Brandon Ayuk was out for the 49ers, so somebody like Pearsall was going to be on the field. Now, you can see here I made many adjustments to most of these, but I actually adjusted a lot of these players just to the prop-based projection. So if you see the greens, they're usually the ones where I might have been a little bit above that number or sometimes below. But either way, you see the greens, those are the ones that I adjusted generally differently. But I just put in the prop-based projections for most of these. And it really didn't change much. Our DFS Army projection was also very similar. I'm not sure that had an effect. And I'm seeing a lot of our subscribers absolutely dominated these tournaments as well. So it could have just been the Dom Station was set up just fine anyway, and it doesn't matter. From there, we just let it rip. And that's the formula that took it down. Now, I wanted to try something a little bit fun in real time on this video, by the way. This is in real time, kind of, because I can pause it, but not going to. So in real time, I've got the back test loaded up for FanDuel, right? And I'm going to show you how I like to go onto the optimizer after a slate is played out and kind of check and see what I did and how it worked out and what it could have been, unburdened by what has been. Sorry, I do that way too often. So I've got the Domination Station now on this screen loaded up in backtest mode, the same exact slate. Now, what's the difference between backtest mode and what I was just showing, which was effectively my actual run in real time? Well, in backtest mode, we add a column to the Domination Station called Final Fantasy Points, where you can actually just see what ended up happening in that tournament, and then we could sort our lineups at the end by final fantasy points to see what kind of scores we can produce. So backtest mode, a couple of things need to be redone. Remember, there I had a 100% RB, and then I had 10% tight end and wide receiver set up for the flex. We allowed one player versus defense and had 3 uniques, 50% randomization. And then, of course, we had our optional things here of the rule, and both of these rules are still there. So when you open backtest mode, all the rules you made during the actual run and the adjustments to the projections, they're all still there. So it allows you to do sort of retesting in real time. Very, very important to always backtest. So I'm just going to give this a run. I'm going to see if I need to change anything else here. No, right? All the settings are in place exactly as the run that took down or took second in the tournament. Should have taken it down. And I'm going to give this a run. And at the end, we're going to sort by final fantasy points. And you're going to see what happens. When you have 50% randomization, each run is going to produce a somewhat significantly different result. So you got to be willing to accept that. And what I'm using as my baseline is I don't care about the results as much in terms of, like here, we're down to only 8% Brock Purdy in a Brock Purdy slate. So I would want to adjust for that, but it's just luck of the button click. I'm going to sort by final fantasy points, and let's see what we scored on our highest. So here we go. With fewer Purdy lineups, we did not sniff the tournament winner in that run, and you could just run it a few more times because the randomization is really high. It's going to get like kind of different results each time. What I'm looking for, though, is a sort of consistency patterns as far as what are the combinations looking like? What are the stacks looking like? So I'll go in and I'll look at, for example, here's another run producing like a 140, a Purdy, but Juwan Jennings Purdy lineup. So you can see here, a lot of it is just kind of like luck of the button push. We got 3 Purdy to Pearsall Pearsall lineups in this run. So had it been this run, it doesn't take it down. Go back and look here, make sure the settings are all equivalent. Now, on the backtest mode, what we might say is, this run got 12% Purdy. We got only 3 Purdy to Pearsall lineups, where you saw before. Interestingly, it's just random. Like I said, when you add the randomization this high, you never quite know what's going to come. So we just give it another run and let it ride. But these are the basic settings that I used. And of course, again, if I look at all these other DFS Army subscribers, a lot of people crush. Now, one of the cool things we did in DFS Army was we had the core play, or one of the nice things this week is we had the core play on Brock Purdy. So I'm going to go back to this. And what I like to do is think about in back testing, all right, what if I had gone a little bit heavier on my favorite play, like the lean of the slate? So I'm going to make a little adjustment there to push to make sure I get a little more Brock Purdy in this run. I'm going to show you some other things that I can do. And I like to do this in backtest mode, again, after every single slate. So I get a feel for, all right, what could I have done? So we see with the randomization, hey, I plucked out the lineup, the randomized set of lineups that I put into the contest. That worked out and happened to pluck a great lineup in there. But you can see here, as you keep running it with the same settings, it doesn't always hit that winning score. It's not that easy to get that kind of a winner. So I like to look at, okay, what other settings could I adjust for that would have made an even bigger impact? Where could I have unfriended somebody, checked something off? We had a lot of Alec Pierce. That worked out. There was a lot of great plays yesterday. A lot of players popped off. I did not have Valdez Scantling at all. If you added some of him, to the lineups, could that have helped, right? So I could have forced some MVS lineups. How do you do that? Maybe change that projection to 6.4. This was a guy that we somewhat talked about, was certainly a viable play on the slate. We could just look through some of these things like the running back. Another move that I had made yesterday that I might want to rethink or kind of, oh, you know what I forgot to do? Yeah, no, I do have the ownership cap there, 120%. Yeah. So I forgot to mention that I did cap ownerships at 120%. So one last thing about the actual run, I was like, man, did I forget to talk about that? On FanDuel was I capped ownership at 120%. Now, why did I do that? When I did my initial run of lineups on FanDuel, the highest ownership I was getting was about 143%. And I started to think about how the slate was in itself. Yesterday's slate was really weird. There weren't any major standout spots, and it felt like one of those times where people were getting chalky on players just because they had no one else to play. Like there wasn't a lot of great options. There were very few options that were good and some that were less good. And so it was the type of slate where I felt like chalk was not, it was definitely not a chalk slate for me. So the lineups initially were very chalky. So they were 143%. So I set my max limit at 120% at the ownership cap, just to make sure I got a more unique run of lineups with where it would pluck lower owned players into the lineup. Now, one other thing I did yesterday, which I obviously regret, was lowering James Conner massively under the projection that we were getting for him, right? Conner was one of the highest owned, and I think this is probably what helped a lot of the DFS Army subscribers take first, second, third, fifth, seventh, ninth in the nickel contest. We just had Conner projected much high, and the props had Conner much higher than what the ownership implied. So I just raised up the Conner exposure a little bit because I want to see if even just that one move makes a massive difference in the final scores of the lineups I'm running here. I also want to take a look back at this contest, and I'm going to look at my entries. Yeah, so basically, when outside of that 100 and, that winning score, so to speak, the next scores were all kind of below 140. So now let me look at this contest real quick because I'm hitting 140s on these runs, and it looks like 140s are going to be, or 143s and 145s. They're top 300. Yeah, top 100, top 200. Yeah, there's some other DFS Army names. Joey. There's another one. So this was pretty common to hit this area. So let's see what just happened in backtest. Yeah, so when I ran it with a little more Conner, not that much, really only up to 19%, just a smidge more. Now we've got a 159 and a 152. Again, looking at the contest, let's go back to first. 159, that's on the leaderboard. That's fifth place. So right here, the same exact run, you just saw me do it in real time. The only adjustment I made was increasing James Conner just a couple of percentage points back up to kind of where he should be. Let's see if we raise it even more, but 159, 152. I'm actually going to just leave it exactly the same, and I'll run it again. And this is what we want to see. Just took the littlest adjustment to one player, and boom, we're starting to hit those first place, top 10 finishes, top 5 finishes. This is in real time. I haven't paused this video. You're seeing it. I'm just singing the praises of the tool, really, because you want to talk about proof of concept. You want to talk about, does this tool work to take down tournaments? There's no question that it does. Oh, I did increase MVS there, so a little bit. We'll call that a little bit of cheating. But does this tool work to take down tournaments? The answer is yes. You can't deny it. We have 5 members all in the top 10. So this is, it's something that's really important to me to always make sure that the tools we have here at DFS Army that we create for our subscribers and for ourselves really put us in a position to be competitive, to have the potential to take down tournaments. And it's amazing, again, to see all of these proof of concept screenshots that come in seemingly every Monday, Sunday night. More of the same. FanDuel, DraftKings, it doesn't matter. So Yeah, I mean, that's the baseline. There we go, 155. So with each run, you see I got a 159, 155, 161. With each run, they're hanging around, they're in the zone. It's funny. This is a Mahomes lineup. How do you like that? And that put up a 59. What's going on with Purdy? I need a little more Purdy in there. Yeah, if we force a little more Purdy, we'll just get our 20% of the Purdy lineups, and I have a feeling that should be the best run. I'm going to do one more. I kind of want to see if we could beat the top score without too much adjustment. If we could beat the top score and kind of take first place or in a redux, not that it matters. And obviously, like I said, in this picture, one of these images right here, you see, where is that one? Yeah, we can see here Gemini put up a 170, which easily wins it. Well, even all of these, J-Mac would have won it with the 167 as well. So both of these guys would have won the 50K in the rush had those lineups been in it. And Gemini did put that in like a dollar game and won another $5,000. So again, big congrats to Gemini and all the big DFS Army winners from this past weekend. Yeah, see, it got worse. That's how it goes with high randomization. Sometimes it's going to get worse, but just keep clicking it, and you hope that the button click that you put in is the one that takes it down. All right, guys, that's it. Just wanted to give a brief overview of the settings I used to win this or take second in this NFL Sunday Rush. I like to show that what we talk about is exactly what we do on the back testing streams. And again, slight adjustment to how I attacked it. I kind of used what I call more a little bit of the statsational model here, where rather than using controlling for max exposure, using exposure max, just very high randomization. Instead, it will create the same effect. It won't allow one player to get overly exposed. So hope this helps. Hope you enjoyed it. And let's keep on kicking ass this NFL season, guys.
Sheesh. Yeah, big time. No man, diamonds in my teeth. I got a lot of shine.